The workshop's technically supposed to be about Twitter, social media, web stuff, but I'm really, we can try and keep it to that, and especially if you came here expecting to hear about that, ask me questions about that. But I'm pretty much wide open to anything if you want to also ask questions about music or how music relates to that, or pretty much, anything other than like, I'm from San Diego, when are you coming to play in San Diego? Don't ask me that. Well, we can talk about that later. So try and keep it to things that are interesting and will be interesting to other people. And then maybe, I was thinking maybe towards the end when we've got a little bit of time left, I'll drag Neil up here and we'll take we'll take your questions. And we can talk because Neil has some Twitter followers too. And we can take some questions together. We almost never do this sort of thing together, so that'll be fun for us. So what I would suggest is, since the room is so small and we can all hear each other, just raise your hand and just maybe stand up, say your name, tell me who you are, and ask your question.
Hello, thank you for coming to my town and stopping me from having to ask you that question. Fantastic to have you here. My name's Deborah Mansfield, singer-songwriter. I'm also a music teacher, and I'm interested from the point of view of yourself, duo project you're doing, recording stuff. What's your tips, or what's the best way to build a vibe in a universal community?
Build a vibe. Well, I think what you're asking is sort of along the same lines of how do you keep things real, instead of I'm a marketing machine and I'm doing these, I'm like following these rules. I think the main thing is to remember that Twitter and social media and things like that, the internet, doesn't have rules about what you can and can't say. And I've found that by sharing a lot of myself and my actual experiences, which includes the negative ones, but I also try not to just dwell and use it as a place to go and bitch and moan about life, which some people do. And I find that in an overdose of bitching and moaning can actually be really irritating, although, some people can be really funny about it. I think it's important to just always keep in mind the constant balance of what you're putting out. So, and keeping things really personal. What's really interesting is, I feel like there used to be a general desire on the part of bands and artists to look as professional as possible. And, you would see press releases, written in the third person as if no one in the band had anything to do with it. And just bands would actually take pains to make it seem like there was a large, significant middleman, doing all this work on their behalf, when actually they were doing a lot of the work themselves. And now I think you're seeing the opposite trend, and maybe the opposite problem. Now you've got labels trying to sound like they care about fans that they actually don't care about, saying, hey dudes on our internet email list, we've got a groovy new tour coming up. You should check us out. It's going to be awesome. And the fans reading those emails are like, oh, this is obviously bullshit copy written by someone in the label office. And so I think the key to keeping it real is you have to speak in your own voice. And whether it's your Twitter feed or your email list or whatever it is, your fans, if they're connecting with you, they know who you are. And they know when you're speaking to them. And you just have to, the only way to keep it real is by being real. And, if you're communicating with your fans, in a business-like manner, you will have a business-like vibe. And that's, fucking fun for anybody. So, really, it sounds, incredibly simple, but the way you do it is by being as authentic and as real as possible in the moment, in the things that you're writing. You speak I speak the way I would speak to a friend, and you share the ups and the downs and the goods and the bads, and you tell the truth. And that, over time, I think builds You know what else you're talking about.
Was the day come up with that's why so many succeeded on it, because I'd say how many of us here following a man on Twitter? Yeah, you're all our friends.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I was talking with someone, I did a bunch of job interviews today, and this journalist was asking me, you know, is it weird that all these people feel like they know you? And I said, well, I think you got the question off. They do know me. You know, these people, sure they feel like they know me, but they actually know me. I'm not putting on a secret suit every morning and being like, I'm going to act like Amanda Palmer, so these people feel like they know me. You know, it's very real. I'm sharing, like, my life is real. It's not made up. It's like, these are real things happening to me, and they're real things that I'm sharing. And, you know, the things that I share on my blog are the same things that I'm sharing with my friends when I call them up and say, hey, you'll never believe what happened yesterday. So it's not an illusion. And I think people forget that, you know, that like this, everything that's happening, all the things that I'm talking about, they're real. They're not, you know, they're not marketing. So, here.
And also, it's my birthday. Sing me a song.
Here you. Maybe. Today's your birthday, right?
Technically,
Oh! We'll talk later.
almost had serenaded me on my birthday.
We can all see. When's your actual birthday? Now, you have to be honest with us.
Tomorrow. What night do you hear?
No, I believe you. What's her name again?
Sonia.
Sonia? Should we sing to her? Oh, your actual birthday. You just got one-upped. You guys should battle for it. What's her name? Sonia?
Yeah.
We'll sing to Sonia and Cass. And when we say Sonia, we'll all look at Sonia lovingly, and then when we sing Cass, we'll look at Cass lovingly. Oh, you feel squashed in there. Okay. You have to share the song or there's no song. I think you should share.
It's my birthday in August.
Neil Gaiman, you're raising your hand.
I just wanted to know if you still remember the Evelyn Evelyn birthday song.
Oh, God. I think so. Do you want to hear the Evelyn Evelyn birthday song? Does anyone have it? We sold high-tiered packages of the Evelyn Evelyn record last year, which is the record I made with Jason Mobley last year. And in the highest tiered package, or one of the highest tiered packages, Evelyn and Evelyn sang you a birthday song, and we emailed it to all the people that ordered that package. And then Jason and I had to sit down and like write a birthday song. So that's what I'll do for you. Oh God, there's no fact I remember it. Sonia, cats. I'm gonna go in opposite. It'll work better if I go opposite.
She did, yeah.
Plus, it actually is your birthday. Cass and Sonia, it's your birthdays, Cass and Sonia. What will you do on your special day? Will you go out to a disco drink? Oh God, I can't remember it. Will you drink a lot of vodka, go out to a disco party, lose your jacket and your shirt and your favorite ukulele, and show up at 4 a.m. at your hotel without your keys, sending drunken texts to your latest ex? Or you could something. Give an elephant your food. You could make a special necklace out of dental floss and glue. Or the best thing you could do, you could teach yourself to knit and knit us a sweater. We do not have a sweater. Please send the sweater to Evelyn and Evelyn, care of 11 Records, Seattle, Washington, 98145. Thank you, Cass and Sonia. It's even better with the guitar. Happy birthdays. Well, that was a diversion.
There was a question before.
What was it again?
Where would your life be without Twitter?
Where would my life be without Twitter? It would probably be more predictable. It would probably be in some ways more organized, but it would not be as fun. Because without Twitter is one thing. I've lived many, many years and toured many years without Twitter. That's its own question. I mean, if I were touring without Twitter, I would not be doing as many last-minute gigs. I probably wouldn't be, connecting with as many random artists on the road and, able to do crazy last-minute spontaneous, acts of randomness. And without the internet, that's a much bigger question. I mean, without the internet, it's very possible that the Dresden Dolls would have gotten signed by a major label, and then when the major label decided, as they probably would have as things go, that the Dresden Dolls weren't going to make them enough money, and they sort of stopped putting their energy into us, we would have had our hands tied, because we wouldn't have been able to share our music with the world. We would have been stuck the way bands in the 80s and 90s used to be stuck when they signed with record labels, and all of a sudden, when the record labels started carrying the bands, had no recourse because their records were physical records, and if the record label didn't feel generous and want to share and want to put those records in stores, the band couldn't do it. So, the internet gave the band, the artist, a huge amount of power that we didn't used to have. You can't shelf a record anymore. And I remember I played a gig with Karen Mantler, this great jazz musician, and this would have been 2002, and she was on a label that had shelved her record. She had made a record, and then the label had decided not to put it out or whatever, and so she was bootlegging her own album, and she had made artwork for it that said Karen Mantler's bootlegged CD, and she was selling them at her shows. She was like, fuck it, I can burn my own CDs. Why not? Screw them. And that was the beginning. I mean, bands being able to burn their own CDs was the beginning. That's how the Dresden Dolls started. We were burning CDs in my kitchen and selling them for $5. And that was happening right around the time I signed with the label. And I signed with the label knowing, we knew where things were headed. And we knew that we had enough power and control. And power and control meaning like the ability to reach people without an intermediate. To to take the risk of signing with a label, knowing that if it didn't work, because the chances are actually pretty high that, things aren't going to work when you sign with a major label. Pretty much for every band that signs with a major label and succeeds and has a fantastic relationship, there's 99 that get dropped or whatever. And so, we took that gamble, but we also took that gamble with like a real get-out-of-jail-free card in our back pocket, saying, if this doesn't work, we can still reach our fans. They're not going to get in the way. And so, things would have been a lot harder without the net, for sure. Impossible even.
I'm just interested, with this kind of constantly living in the Twitter sphere, do you find it interferes with living life in real time? And how do you manage that balance?
I feel like I have to figure that one out, because I have definitely noticed that it's equal parts, wonderful, beautiful, amazing to connect. Oh my God, you can have, so many wonderful things happen to you in 5 minutes on Twitter, and it's equal parts toxic, because it can eat your brain. And I think that it's something that Neil and I talk about all the time, and it's like, and we're in a relationship with each other, and we both have the ability at any time to tune out of the moment and go into the Twitter sphere, where there's always someone wanting to have a conversation with you, and there's always someone saying something nice about you, and it's always a little, bit of an ego boost, or you can always feel productive But that's, at a certain point, it's counterproductive. Because we could literally spend 24 hours a day on Twitter and only create more work and opportunities for ourselves. And you have to have the self-discipline to put it down, and it's hard. It's really hard when you know there's a connection there waiting for you. It's really hard to put it down and just be in a room with people, And I think a big conversation that's being had right now, and that is the next big conversation, is now that we have, all of this power and all these possibilities in our phones, are there going to be any rules, any new social rules? Because it is really disheartening to be at a restaurant and a table full of friends where everyone is tuned out. And it happens all the time. It happens, constantly. And, you don't want to, you kind of don't want to be the party pooper. You don't want to be rude and say, hey, should we maybe all put our phones away and talk to each other? But, I'm assuming, or I'm hoping, that it gets to the point where actually we have the collective self-discipline to make some etiquette, And so there's that side of the conversation. There's like the etiquette of like, are you allowed to just tune in and tune out of reality with little regard to who's around you? Neil and I were just talking about this yesterday, and saying that one of the problems with phones is that if someone is with you and they're tuning out, you don't know where they're going. And sometimes they might be like, someone might be trying to help you out, and you've just mentioned something like, wow, I forgot the address of this place that we're going. And all of a sudden they've tuned out and they're in their phone, and you don't know if they're having an entirely different conversation with an entirely different person, or they're looking up the address of where you're going. And so maybe part of the etiquette there is when you tune out, you say something, and you say, this is where I'm going, just so you know. Because since you can use your phone for so many things, it's impossible to know. And your phone doesn't broadcast out the back, hey, this is what I'm doing right now, just so you know. And then as an artist, that's a whole different problem. As an artist, or as a person, the choices that you're making on a day-to-day basis about how connected to be. It's tempting for anybody to sit and just go down a YouTube, Wikipedia rabbit hole that lasts hours, because it's so entertaining and tempting and kind of feels sort of maybe productive because you're learning things. But it's a very narrow path sometimes, and you can forget that the world is actually really interesting without those things. And it gets easier and easier to forget the more you're caught inside your phone and computer. So I for one am trying to leave my phone aside when I go to meals and when I take walks and stuff, so I'm just not tempted to check in. And especially as an artist, there's always work. You could always be moving forward, technically moving forward, getting things done. And so if you don't have the discipline to just say, I've done enough. I've gotten things done, I've got to stop. It's hard. And some people just can't stop. I often can't stop. It's hard.
Just thanks for seeing this on the conversation. But I just had three questions. The first one is very confusing to the way also, and we need to who wants to about lifestyles and particularly.
So her question was, where do I think the music industry is going to be in 10 years, and do I think Twitter and the internet benefit some artists more than others? I don't know where anything's going to be in 10 years. I think, your guess is as good as mine. I have a general feeling, and I can kind of answer both of these questions at the same time. And if you look at the statistics, we're moving away from an era of giant blockbuster artists. But also, if you think of it like a social system, it used to be that you had your aristocracy, and then your serfs. And the aristocracy would be your Prince, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper types. I'm of the 80s, these are the examples I'll use. But And, and then down below you had your, like your hardworking, gigging DIY bands that would never really be able to quit their day jobs because unless they got signed and given money and put on the road, they would never really be able to have the resources to make it work. And it was a little more black and white. And now, I think you're going to see a push towards the middle class. The internet is sort of like the Industrial Revolution. It's like, that's pretty good. But really what's happening is the internet is a tool that makes it possible for a band to have a small number of devoted fans and make a living. Because if you're able to do the things that only labels used to be able to do for you, or promotional companies used to be able to do for you, because you have Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter, and a band like the Jane Austen Argument, nobody knows them down here. No one has heard of them. They're awesome, right? And the fact that the fact that they can Twitter, hey, we're having a picnic at 1 o'clock and it's free and we're going to play our music for people in Hobart. The fact that they can Twitter that, Tom can text me and say, hey, can you retweet that? And I can do it. And in a matter of 2 minutes, all of my fans and a bunch of people in this city can know about that event and go and then buy their music. It's incredible. And it just gives, it gives the artist the tool that they didn't used to have. And I grew up in an era where, like, if you wanted to promote your show, you had to make a flyer, you had to go to the local Xerox place, you had to Xerox flyers, and you had to put them up all over town, and you had to give them to people, and that still works. But you didn't have the option of just letting everyone know what was happening. And you also didn't have the option of freely sharing your music to turn people on, to get them to the point where they would give you money, enough money so that you could quit your job and pay your rent and put food on the table. And so that's now an option for a lot of bands. Now, those bands are going to have to work hard to do it because it doesn't come easily. Like, you have to sit down and do the work. But the fact that it's an option and the fact that you can now tour more easily and find an audience in different cities more easily means that, that middle class of band will exist. And I don't think that, that superstars will die out completely, but I think they will become more and more rare. And Lady Gaga is she's the exception that proves the rule. There are not artists out there selling gazillions of records anymore. It just doesn't happen. So whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's changing. And the interesting thing about the music industry is that they've been in denial about this for so long. And now, it's way too late. Like, they missed the boat. They missed a great opportunity with Napster and everything. They were in full denial. Look, this is not going to change the way we do things. It's like, we've already changed everything. Like, you have not been paying attention. So it's interesting. Like, now there's all the backlash, and you've got, like, labels collapsing left and right. People, with jobs that just literally aren't necessary because of what artists are not able to do themselves. So. Here, say the question to the mic so that you can.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, you said before you have sort of so much power in that you've got a big fan base on Twitter and you're following your blog and Facebook and stuff. And you like to keep it real, but do you sometimes find it quite difficult to sort of put the filter between what you really want to say and what actually goes on the internet? Because I know that some artists have put stuff on Twitter before and just offended millions and millions of people. And at the same time, some artists, I know even yourself, have done something where they've just mentioned something and then started a rebellion.
Yeah.
Or they've just mentioned it and just didn't know how much literal power they held over their fans, and their fans going, no, that's wrong, we want to do something about it. So do you find it difficult to sort of put the filter between what you actually want to say and just how you end up wording it, so it's still real enough, but people aren't going to get offended or get insane?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Well, there's a lot of things to address there. The first rule I have about Twitter and my blog and everything in general is to hurt nobody. Because it's very easy to do. And I learned this lesson early on with my blog. It was like way in the very beginning. It was probably 2002. I hadn't been blogging for very long. And I had this terrible experience in Boston in a piano shop. It was right after we signed with the label, and I was taking my advance money and I was going to buy a piano. And I was shopping in different piano shops around Boston. And I went into this one teeny little boutique piano shop, no bigger than this room, and started playing one of the pianos to see how it sounded, because I was testing out different pianos. And there was maybe 2 or 3 other people in the shop. And the guy came over to me and asked me to leave because he didn't like my playing. And he thought it was too loud, and I wasn't sitting down and playing Bach. I was playing an Amanda Palmer song because that's what I was gonna probably be playing on the piano. It hit something really insecure in me, and I went out. I mean, even getting emotional talking about it. I went out on the curb and cried, and I was like, "Fuck him!" And I went home and I blogged about how upset I'd gotten, but I gave the name and address of the piano store. Bad idea! Because all of my fans started writing these really nasty letters to the guy saying do you know who she is? And for a split second I was like, yeah! Oh, that was really mean, wasn't it? And so I took the blog down, or I took the address down. I sort of wrote a little addendum saying I think I've just learned something. I shouldn't do that, should I? And I still to this day imagine that poor dude sitting in his little desk in his sad little piano shop with a pile of hate mail from indignant Amanda Palmer fans. And there's a lot of negative things I could say about a lot of situations. And I just don't. Because, it would also make me look like an asshole. I feel like the sort of person who spends a lot of their time and energy wandering around and going this sucked and let me tell you all about it. It's that gets a little old too. And I think it's actually a generally good life practice to focus on the things that are going well and not the things that are irritating you. You kind of have to. But to give that a lot of time and energy is just bad anyway. And, and I have to draw the line with a lot of situations. I don't really talk about my family very much. I'll talk about when nice, good things happen, but if I have a really, awful argument with my mom, I don't go to Twitter with that. You just don't. You don't do that. So, and with Brian, that was really hard. It was really hard being in the Dresden Dolls. We had a lot of arguments, we had a lot of conflicts, but I would not take those to my blog. It wouldn't have been fair, and it wouldn't have been right. Those are things that relationship problems and, work problems and things that are really best kept within their own situations, because dragging the public into a conflict like that is just silly. But there are days where my brain is completely preoccupied by, a problem, an issue that is totally inappropriate for the blog, and I've deleted entire blogs. I've written entire blogs that I've just gone delete. No, actually, I'm just not going to talk about this because it's only going to create more bad energy, and you just never want to do that. So yeah, so I actually edit more than people might think, And that's funny because when people are like, "You don't edit anything. How is it you can be so completely honest about everything?" I'm like, "Oh." That's very funny. So, yeah. And so, and where you draw the line, there's an art to that too. I've pissed plenty of people off. And I've made jokes on Twitter that seemed completely innocuous to me, and had like people with fangs and claws out. But I also, I've gotten to the point where I think I know where my lines are, and because I'm pretty confident that I know where my lines are, I also don't apologize. Like if I wasn't intending to say something in a hurtful way and someone takes it that way, I feel like that's their problem. And we can have a discussion about it, but I feel like if you spend a lot of time just getting backed into a corner, you'll live in that corner. And at a certain point, you just have to stand up and say, like, actually, no, like, I know what I'm doing. So, yeah, but that's, internet is a place where evil people lurk. And, there's a lot of bad energy out there. And there's a lot of people who just hang out on the internet, deliberately trying to hurt other people. And it's part and parcel of the job to sit there and actually try to not take that stuff personally. It's really hard sometimes. So,
Hi, my name's Jeff Lynn. I'm a music journalist.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Sorry. Good? Yeah. I was looking at your blog the other day because I was writing up a piece about the show on Saturday. And in this piece I was writing about, Amanda Palmer has an Australian flag draped on the piano stool in her house. And as soon as I wrote that down, I thought, that's really fucking creepy that I know that. And I only know that because it was on a photo on the slopes. But so how does it feel to have that much of your life online available to this many hundreds of thousands of people? Is it creepy or liberating or terrifying?
No, it's not creepy or terrifying at all. I think I actually like challenging myself with what I find myself afraid to share. Especially, when I feel like I've maybe hit a weak spot, and or I'm feeling slightly ashamed, and I find myself afraid to share it because I don't want to look bad. I find myself stopping in those moments and saying like, oh, like you're afraid, aren't you? Like you're afraid that you're going to look bad in front of these people. Maybe you should do it.
And you kind of hover over the post.
Yeah, really, and that's but that's what makes you a strong person. Like when you're willing to look bad in front of your fans or your friends, or you're willing to admit a mistake, that gives you a different kind of power actually, because you're willing to be human. And that actually is what helps other people connect to you. And, I think this actually gets back to your question, like your willingness to really be yourself. It's actually empowering to other people, because, some people might look at me and think of me as a role model or whatever, something to emulate. And I strive to be my own imperfect self. I don't want people to see some picture of perfection, because that would be bullshit,
Creepy.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, like, to get back to Lady Gaga, she and I have a lot in common, I think, just in terms of, like, where we come from. We're like musical theater dorks who, like, got a shot at stardom. But she's said really specifically that she doesn't want anyone to see anything imperfect about her. And that she wants to be that kind of like pop star fantasy for people. Willing to be, like very, very willing to be, an escape, a fantasy, which is not a wrong choice, but it's the opposite choice to the choice I've made, which is like the desire to be unairbrushed so that people can relate to me. Because that's actually kind of why I got into it in the first place. It wasn't to be famous, it was to like connect with people and to make friends, real ones. Not people who would just like sit around telling me how awesome I was, but people who I could talk to. And, that's where most of this came from. I was like a weird, isolated dorky kid, assuming that, you know, if I went into music and started a band and like went in a rock star direction, that would give me the keys to actually like find the people like me that I wanted to hang out with. So, you know, so I went a different route with that. And I was, you know, I struggle with it because sometimes, you know, sometimes it's really tempting to want to be this, you know, more fantastic entity. But I think it's like, you know, it's like a hall of mirrors, you know, because sometimes the you know, the more perfect you are, the more fallible you are. And I think that's also why, you know, I'm very lucky with my fan base because, you know, I feel like if I do something wrong or if someone doesn't agree with a viewpoint or doesn't like a song or whatever, it's great. Because it's still, you know, it's still part of the whole thing. All the flaws are part of the package. You already got a question.
Oh, alright.
Let me come over here. Here, use this.
I wrote it down in 3 parts, so I wouldn't forget. I'm a singer-songwriter myself, and we kind of, the band I'm in, we kind of finding it frustrating that, like how to get ourselves known, how to promote ourselves. How long did it take you, like how long did it take you persevering to get signed? And what do you suggest is the best way to go around promoting ourselves? We've talked about the internet and things on there. What do you suggest? And also, when you said you have signed to a label, then also you have the freedom through the internet. What's the like? Can you explain a bit more about that? What's like the legality? What are the legal things involved in that? With how much freedom do you have if you do sign to a record label? And what's the balance to do so you still have that balance? So questions. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll try not to get super long-winded. I think your first question, how do I get my band known? It depends what you want to do. If you want to go tour the world, I would suggest a different strategy than if you want to make sure that people in Tasmania know about you and you can tour Tasmania. Touring Tasmania is easier than touring internationally. So,
The strange thing is that we lived in Melbourne for a year, and we got gigs in Melbourne much easier. than
Yeah.
we had here in Clever, because,
she's saying that she got gigs more easily in Melbourne, which is like a bigger city.
I think it's more competition or something.
Well, there's also a lot more venues for music in a city like Melbourne. I mean, in Hobart, I think you've got a limited number of choices of where you can try and get a gig. And, you know, the advice that I would give to, how many people in your band?
We're just a duo, we're an electronic band.
Okay, so that's great. That's actually lucky. The way the Dresden Dolls started, because we couldn't get booked in clubs because no one knew us, and why would they book us? And you know, we were this weird band with, you know, we played at our friends' houses. We played at parties. We threw parties so that we could play at them. You know, and we did a lot of that. The whole first year of the band was us playing in my house, at our friends' houses, in art galleries, and basically any gig anyone would give us. And we made no money. And once we had enough people who actually liked our band, that's also key. People need to like your band. Because you can play all the house parties you want, and if people don't get into your band, it's not that you're promoting yourselves wrong, it's just that you might be making music that people aren't connecting to. And once we had enough fans, and by enough, 50, we booked ourselves at a club and brought those people with us. And that's the difficult transition. But you convince a club, hey, we have 50 people, they will come. And then those 50 people come, and the club goes, oh, okay, you're real. People like your music, and then it just goes on from there. So I would suggest, just playing when and wherever you can. And the fact that you're a duo just makes it easy, because doing that with 9 people is hard. And as far as The legal question. What was your second question?
Oh, the second part was, you actually answered it, it's the first one.
Yeah, I thought I sort of, yeah.
And
It took us a couple of years before we could actually make, real money.
you
Okay.
personally, how long have you been persistently at it, to...
Since I was born.
Sorry.
I mean, that's an interesting story because I was a solo piano player without a band until I met Brian. And I was, I was passionate and I was writing a lot of the songs that became the Dresden Dolls songs in my early 20s, but I was really lazy. And I mean, I call it lazy, but I was reluctant to work very hard towards booking myself and getting gigs. And I was not the person that you see now. I wasn't ready. And Brian was like the catalyst. But it's a lot easier, and I dare say more fun, to say, hey, book my band, than book me. I'm awesome. Having a band it's like having a gang. It's like you can really feel more powerful saying my band is great, you should come see us, than like I play piano, come to my gig. It's a lot more personal and it's harder. So Brian really changed things for me, and we were a great team together. He would like go to the post office and mail things out to agents and labels, and I would sell the internet, and so the division of labor worked out really well. And as far as the legal stuff goes, I mean, that's a huge can of worms, and I could talk about a gazillion things, but I still don't own the recordings that the Dresden Dolls did. I never will. Those songs, the recordings of those songs, do not belong to me. They will forever belong to Roadrunner Records. Lucky for me, anyone here can download them for free off the internet, and I'm not saying you should do that. Yeah, well, I mean, legally things are messy, right? But you just, I would suggest, like, even your question, how long did it take for you to get signed? I don't think that would necessarily be the goal of a band nowadays, especially depending on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to tour internationally and you find a really good label who's willing to actually work hard and give you some advance cash and stuff, maybe it's a good idea. But I would recommend doing as much as possible on your own and not selling your publishing. Never sell your publishing and not selling your recordings unless you really are willing to make the trade. Because once you sign to a label and you sign off on your recordings, they own them, So it's complicated. What time is it? Just want to check.
Got about 10 minutes.
Neil, do you want to come up?
Sure.
Neil, go. This is my husband. I do like saying that.
You say that a lot. I didn't take a photo of you. I have to say this because I didn't, because of your privacy. I saw you watching him with so much.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question. Anything that I can answer more. It would be writers.
It's come up because this was a question sort of that I had for both of you. In what way has Twitter and the internet sort of impacted on your relationship together? I mean, I know it had a big part in you guys either meeting and getting to know, I presume.
Well, the internet definitely had a huge impact, just because the way that we met is about 5 years ago. Jason Webley, who is an amazing singer-songwriter who's coming to Hobart pretty soon, wrote a song called 11 Saints and made a very silly video for 11 Saints with some paper cutouts, which a friend of mine sent me. And I played it, and I thought, this is brilliant, it's just lovely. And I put it on my blog. And Jason Webley, saying, I've just got 20,000 people looking at this video that I would never have had, and I don't really know who you are, but I understand it's kind of a big deal that you put this up, and thank you for sending me all these people. And would you like some more of my music? And I said, sure. So he sent me a bunch of CDs, and I sent him some books, and we sort of became this little mutual fan club. And which meant that when he was doing his Evelyn project with Amanda Palmer, I put up a little thing about it, and a week later got an email from one Amanda Palmer saying, I understand you put something up on your blog, thank you so much, and Jason got an email, and never read his stuff. Actually, it was really nice, and we just sort of became pen pals. And I got to say, you know, I have several Dresden Dolls songs on the Some Songs I Really Like playlist. So we became, you know, sort of pen pals. The internet meant that she could, when she had this idea of bringing out a book of photographs, because her record company had suddenly slashed the budget, decided not to include these photos she was going to put into Who Killed Amanda Palmer, and she went, well, life has just given me lemons, I will make lemonade. Oh, damn it, I'll do a book out of this. And then something again, but maybe people wouldn't want to buy a book of photos of me dead. I know what I'll do, I'll get somebody to write some words. Who do I know who's actually an author? That Neil Gaiman dude that I've been writing to. They say, would you write some, here are 100 photographs of me dead. Would you like to write some stories to go with them? I'm looking at them and these photos, and she's definitely dead. Quite frequently naked. And they actually did look like little frozen stories. As I wrote back and said, sure. And she went, what? Because I think she just sort of asked me first on the basis that I'd say no, and she'd find something else. But then we met in real life. And then we became friends in real life. And that sort of moved out of the realm of internet and the web.
We can start telling people we met on YouTube.
We didn't. But in terms of the actual, the Twitter bit, it's been really weird. It was weird for both of us actually sort of negotiating our way through having a sort of semi-public relationship, and that was also partly because, you know, Amanda was explaining before her privacy lines, which basically she doesn't really have them. She's a kind of, you know, there is that she'll sketch off and go, well, I'm not going to mention my mum because I know that I will get that phone call from my mum if I simply mention my mum, so my mum is off limits from my blog, or whatever. But she has very different privacy lines to me. I'm English. It's a strange and embarrassing place.
You picked the most embarrassing life possible. Good job.
So it's been really good. It has been a matter of negotiation. You know, there have been places, and I don't mean negotiation in the sense of me saying, well, you can say this, but you can't say that. I mean negotiation in the same way that, you know, you would negotiate your way down a dangerous mountain trail. So take it one step at a time and try and figure out where you're going to put your feet next.
We've both upset each other with slightly passive-aggressive Twitters. and we only had to go there once or twice to go like, yeah, this really is like, this is not okay. You know, Neil was once, you know, like held up and late for, you know, a meal with me that I was really looking forward to, and I only had a little bit of time. I was in rehearsal, and I sort of sat there alone in a cafe and wrote this like grumbly passive-aggressive, like, just sitting here alone, you know, like something like, I forget what it was that I wrote, but it was actually, you know, it was kind of a dig, and it was kind of mean, and I didn't really think about how much it would upset him when I did it, because I was just kind of letting off steam. But when I realized, like, oh no, like that's, you know, that just has to come out of you know, that has to come out of play. It's just not fair. And so, you know, we've had to learn that by making the mistakes. Yeah.
The thing that she was talking about earlier about actually announcing what you're doing came from a train ride that we were on, where I'd been exchanging some direct messages on Twitter with an old friend I hadn't seen for 15 years about meeting us on a station platform while we were on this train journey across America. And then as we were getting in, I realized I was still on deadline and I was not going to be able to spare the time. And I checked with Mandarin and said, "What do you think about seeing him on?" And she said, "We can't do it." So I then pulled out my phone and went into Twitter.
We were at breakfast.
We're sitting there at breakfast on the train. And I pull out my phone and go into Twitter in order to send him a direct message. And she looks down and sees that I've gone into Twitter, and it seems that somehow I've zoned out. And of course, I didn't actually have a phone number for this guy or even an email. That was the only way that we were communicating. And she was furious with me. And
I was also PMSing.
And I was indignant. I couldn't watch, and it took several hours of reconstructing why you were so furious with me. And stopped talking to me at breakfast and freezing out. And that was the point where I was like, "Oh, you went on Twitter." I said, "Oh, I went on Twitter because that was the only..." And we sort of figured at that point that the trouble is you don't know. Somebody pulls out a phone, they go off into cyberspace. The body has been left behind. There's still meat at the table. You have no idea where the mic has gone, what it's doing. I think. Patient.
Yeah, well, my name is Ben. I'm a religious journalist, not a human journalist. My question is, I'm reaching out to potential fans, trying to switch on around Palmer Neil Gaiman project you've got going at the moment. Is there any emotion or atmosphere or like an attitude that you try to hook them into like some sort of zone or something in order to be able to communicate better?
What a deep question.
I'll go back to you. You can
Treat everyone the same way.
You can do the deep one. I've now been blogging for a decade, which means that I was blogging back when dinosaurs were blogging. And I've been Twittering now pretty much since the beginning of Twitter. And now 1.5 million Twitter followers. And I get written up on these scary things that I don't even think should exist, where nervous young writers are informed that they need their blog presence and they need their Twitter presence. Go and look at Neil Gaiman and see how he does it. And sometimes they write to me and they ask for my formula and stuff. And I write back and I say, look, you don't quote unquote connect, and you're not networking, and all of this stuff is complete and utter bollocks. The only point in doing this is because it makes you happy. And the only point in doing this is to, be yourself. Say, if you have something to say, say it. If you don't have anything to say, shut the fuck up and go off and get I'm perfectly well aware that I've written 1.5 million words on my blog. That probably without a blog, at least 600,000 of them would have been novels. There's probably 2 long books that I haven't written because I blog. On the other hand, I had so much fun blogging, and writing's kind of weird and lonely. And this way, you meet people, and you get to, I love the fact that just before this thing started, I read the news story about the couple riding the inflatable dolls in Queensland. A couple in Queensland were decided that obviously, given the rivers, the smart thing to do would be to blow up some inflatable sex dolls and down the river. And of course, the police have now issued a formal statement clarifying that inflatable sex dolls are not recognized flotation devices. And complaining about the huge waste of police resources at a time when genuine rescues need to be done of idiots writing sex toys. And the final line in the article states, the final fate of the inflatable sex toys is not currently known. I hope they've gone off for a better life together. I saw that and tweeted it, and it's just gone viral in America because they're still awake in Los Angeles. So watching it retweet, and that was really fun. That was a kind of small goofy thing where you spot a story and you throw it up, and the entire world goes, oh my god. And it's fun, it's cool, it's connecting. But it has no purpose other than that. And like Amanda, I've learned the thing of with how it becomes great responsibility, and like her, I've also learned that you don't screw up. And if you do it once, if I get angry at somebody, I probably shouldn't Twitter it, because you don't want to send 1.5 million people to be rude to the hotel that won't, turn off the fire alarm at 2 in the morning or whatever, and you could. So you sort of have to learn your balance. So you try and make the world a better place and talk to people, and that's my entire.
Let's take one more question right here.
Do you find that it's more difficult as a writer as opposed to a musician to get your writing out there? I'm a writer myself, and I suppose that it's such a different medium to music. It's more accessible but less accessible to an extent. The question's kind of to both of you.
I think you're in a wonderful place right now. I think pretty much everything that applies to music applies to writing, but music just got there first. But I think up until very, very recently, it was always about the gatekeepers. You could write something, you could write a novel, now you have to go and find a publisher. You can write an article or a story, you have to find somebody who will publish it. Those things are gatekeepers. Without those gatekeepers, your story is never going to get read. Your article is never going to get read. Your magazine piece is never going to get read. That's just how things work. And one of the things that the internet has given us is the depowering, the disempowering, the disenfranchising of the gatekeepers. And because, and people say, well, what would you do if you were a young writer? And go, well, if I were a writer, I'd be writing stuff and I'd be sticking it up on the web. I'd be giving everything away for free that I possibly could. Because we are still living in a world in which you can, if somebody wants to publish a book, they will. The fact that something's been published on the web actually doesn't deter a real publisher or a print publisher from publishing the book. I have friends now who've written things and say to me, what should I do with it? And I said, well, if I were you, I'd put it up on Amazon as a Kindle book. You have access. You have exactly the same access through a web page that anybody else has, that the New York Times has, that a publisher has. You can reach the entire world. And I think that in 10 years' time, the world will belong to the people who figured that out. And I think that, I don't think that paper books are ever going to die. But I suspect that I'm with Amanda on the same thing that is happening right now to music will probably start happening in the world of books. In that, I sell millions of books a year. I don't know if I'm going to sell millions of books a year the day that people figure out how to, the day that everybody has a Kindle or equivalent, everybody uses a Kindle or equivalent, and you can email you know, somebody who actually does buy my book can then email it to 150 of their friends, or you can, even now, if you want to read anything by me, you know, just Google and you go and find whatever Russian site you can download it from. And I don't think that's a particularly, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm happy to stick stuff up for free because I don't think at this point in time it cuts into anything. I think it just helps make me an audience. But it may do. It may change everything. But it's so much fun. And it's so much fun seeing what happens next that I really don't mind, and I don't view it as threatening. But so my answer to what I would do if I were a writer is I put stuff up and get it seen.
What do you say? I think we need to call it. Yeah? Is it time?
Yeah, we can do one more if you like. Who's got a famous last question?
Yeah, who's got the best question?
I do.
Have you asked a question yet?
No.
Okay.
Alright, it's a good question.
Oh. Guys.
What do you think of the depth of MySpace developed recently, and how do you put out a really good experiment with it? What's the best one?
Well, The Depth of MySpace by Amanda Palmer. I don't think MySpace is quite dead. And speaking as someone who needs to work in the currency of bands and music, bands who people tell me about, bands when I'm going shopping for a band to open up for me. When someone tells me about a band, or I want to find out about your band, or you tell me you have a band, and I want to know about it, MySpace still wins in terms of usability. Because you might have a website that costs you $20,000 to design with fancy flash and all sorts of cool things to look at and do, but I don't care. What I actually want to know is, what does your music sound like? What do you look like? Do you have your video all in one place where I can see who your band is, what you're about, and what's going on with you right now? Where are you from? Do you have a lot of fans? Where are you touring? And I can look at your MySpace page and see all of that. Until something comes along and replaces that and makes it just as easy for me to see what your band does and is in about 5 seconds, MySpace will still, as far as music is concerned, will stay in the forefront. And I think if you asked any booking agent or promoter, they'd probably tell you the same thing. MySpace is easiest. Whether people are using MySpace for social networking still, yeah, that's probably going away because Twitter and Facebook are taking it over. But as far as music is concerned, if you're a band, you should make a MySpace page. And you should put your music up there, and you should also have a link to your site if you want to do something creative. But I think, and it really isn't, it's not about how many MySpace friends you have at that point. It's really about just saying, like, this is, it's basically like the equivalent of a business card for a band. And if you want to put out an experimental EP, what's the question?
Well, what would be the best way to go about it? Like, it may only be like you may only do one performance, or what's the best way to promote that to get the idea out there?
Only you can answer that question. Seriously. I mean, there's so many ways to answer that question. There's so many things you could do. If you have some music, you can't ask me how to promote it and what to do, because only you know what you're going after. And, I would suggest you kind of take the sum, total of everything I've just said and make music. And, the most concrete advice I can give you is give it away for free, especially if it's experimental music, like you're fucked. So give it away for free and hope that it finds its audience.
Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah.
Well, no, experimental music is hard. Like, it doesn't have a general mainstream audience. You have to go out and you have to find the weirdos who love experimental music and will listen to it. So, go to your local radio station and find the weirdo who does the experimental music show and say, here, you might like this, will you play it? And put it up online everywhere and find the pockets of people who are into experimental music and say, here, take it. If people connect with it and they like it, you'll know. And then you can take the next step and charge money.
The other thing on anything like that is you are living in a world that's so much better for anything like that than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Because if there are, let's say, 5,000 people around the world who would like your music, the odds are that if you were making that music 20 years ago, maybe 5 of them would find it. Now, you can probably find all of them, or most of them, and they'll tell the rest. And that, in the long term, is what, if you want to make music that will keep you alive and feed you, that will be your audience. They'll be out there. But first of all, find them. Let them know that they like you. Give it away for free, and then come up with inventive ways to make them enjoy paying.
So thank you guys so much. These were great questions.